Hello, everyone. I am back here on the Life Forces podcast with all of you. I will be back just for a few more episodes, I think, until I take an extended break from November into spring 2025, which is so crazy. Before I dive into this episode, which is all about why I no longer drink alcohol, I want to tell you the ways that you can work with me for the month of October, because it'll be your last chance for a while. In just a month, we don't really have time to do like in-depth coaching, stuff like that. I am offering one-off sessions for a limited time. So I think I have like 5 different types of sessions. So one of them will be astrology, your natal chart. So looking at your birth chart, all the ins and outs of it, what energies come easily to you, where you might find some struggles and how we can overcome them in a way where we don't need to bring the drama. In terms of astrology, we can also look at your transits, which is what's coming up for you, basically. So in terms of where the planets are going to be for the rest of this year into 2025 and how they interact with your chart, what shifts you can expect, what areas of life are going to be important, where there's going to be areas of growth and expansion for you. So that's another option, transits. If you're already looking ahead to 2025 and thinking like, what should I prioritize? What's going to be important? That's a really good thing to look at. And then we can do a relationship reading. So this can be a romantic relationship. It can also be a friendship. It can also be you and your child. It can also be you and a parent or sibling. Whatever kind of close relationship you have, if you want to look at the dynamics of it, what kind of energy you both bring to the relationship, what you both need in the relationship, where there might be some difficulties and strategies to overcome them and to better understand each other. I love doing relationship readings. I feel like almost a relationship therapist. I mean, I'm not like completely qualified for that, but it's just the depth we get into is really fascinating. So highly recommend that. Even if you already think your relationship is like pretty sweet, let's keep making it better. Why not, right? Then, of course, we have a human design reading. So looking into your human design, what's your energy type? What's your strategy and authority? How are you best meant to flow with the world? I really recommend any of my sessions if you're sort of like feeling stuck or at a crossroads, especially if you've been dealing with like feeling you're on the edge of burnout or feeling like no matter what you do, things aren't working or flowing. Human design is a really good thing to look into, especially if you have no idea what any of it is about. It's super illuminating and super helpful and actionable for people. Then we have a new type of reading, which is body alchemy. And I'm planning on having an episode kind of getting into what I mean by body alchemy. But to me, it's this thing I sort of came up with, and it's about better understanding your own energy patterns and how you most easily create success. So there's a little bit of astrology and human design thrown in there, like certain aspects of it, but it's also just looking at things like your menstrual cycle, if you menstruate, you know, when you're most productive, like honoring how your energy naturally progresses through the day and taking advantage of those times where you're feeling really up and honoring the times where you need a little bit more rest instead of trying to push the same way every day. And then another way to work with me is via my Eclipse Masterclass. I mean, eclipse season is over. The portal is still sort of open, even though the solar eclipse in Libra was October 2nd. But the Eclipse Masterclass is really beautiful because it will also teach you about the lunar nodes, which is just an important topic no matter when you're diving into it, because it has to do with your life purpose, what your soul wants, what you're moving towards in this lifetime. So highly recommend the Eclipse Masterclass. Very affordably priced. You can go at it at your own pace. So for all these, I will have links in the show notes. And if you have any questions, you can DM me at Life Forces Inc. on Instagram or email or carrier pigeon. I'm sure you can find a way to reach me. I will be having other self-paced resources coming for you very soon, especially during the break. I want to have a way that you guys can still learn and grow and expand, but without my physical presence. So very excited for that. All right, let us get back to the meat and potatoes of this episode. And I really wanted to talk about this for a long time. And, when I think about it, I don't think I talk about it so much on social media, for example. And it's not because I don't want to. I think part of it is it's just become such an integral part of my life that I don't even really think about it anymore. And so this is about my relationship to alcohol and why I no longer have a relationship with alcohol. The relationship is a hard no boundary for now. I want to talk a little bit about my evolution with alcohol and also with other substances and how it has negatively at some points impacted my life, and then not drinking anymore has positively impacted me. Everyone has a different relationship with alcohol and with substances and also with addiction. I don't consider myself someone with an addictive personality, so my journey is definitely different than someone who would call themselves an alcoholic. I didn't stop drinking because I had those tendencies. I just stopped drinking because I felt like it was the right thing for me to do. I don't think I ever really felt out of control with alcohol, let's say, or I didn't feel like it was ruling over me or taking over my life per se. I just, at a certain point, was fed up with how it was making me feel and how it was impacting me on a daily, weekly, or whatever basis. So in my teens, alcohol was definitely a form of escape and rebellion. I can't remember the exact moment I tried alcohol. It was probably some like disgusting vodka drink. It was really also just to like fit in and feel accepted. And I think when I first tried it, I was in high school and it was probably grade 9. It actually wasn't with anyone that was attending the high school that I went to. It was with other friends that I had originally known from elementary school, but they were going to high school in a different city. I was probably like lacking something, to be honest, in my high school friend group, and I was like craving more. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it was maybe more rebellion because I had a lot of friends who had very strict parents, and as a result, they were very like by the book doing things, which I mean, that's totally fine. I totally respect that. But I think at the time I was just like, I want to do something crazy. I want to like let loose, I want to experiment, as many teenagers want to. On the weekends, I would spend time with this other group of friends. I knew like 2 of the girls well, and then just kind of like met other people. And I don't even think I was really ever close with them either. It was kind of just, we would get together on the weekend, somehow find alcohol and just like drink it and do stupid things. And so like, honestly, when I think about it, the things we were doing in and of themselves weren't even that fun necessarily. It was just kind of like, this is the thing to do. We're just going to get drunk. We're just going to go to this party, or we're just going to like stay in whoever's basement and see what happens, And I think also when I look back, I was numbing a lot of uncomfortable emotions that probably most teenagers have anyway. I just like felt kind of weird. I didn't fully feel like I fit in or like got it at my high school, but then I didn't fully feel like I fit in with these people. And so to feel more integrated with that group, I would just like go along with everything and drink because like, why would I be the only sober person there? That's so weird, Yeah, it was just kind of a strange time when I think about it. And I remember feeling like I couldn't really ever be myself around those people. Like I never felt good enough or cool enough or anything. So I think the alcohol kind of like equalized things out, maybe something like this. And it just became a thing to do, and it just felt like a rite of passage and like, oh, of course I'm going to do this. Why not? I'm not lame, I'm sure my parents picked up on some things. I don't know if I was ever like grounded or punished specifically. Like, I tried to be subtle about it, but my mom always had a really strong sense of smell. So that didn't help me try to conceal things. And then not quite concurrently, like maybe a little bit after, when I was 15 or 16, I tried weed for the first time. And this was with some older guy friends when I was in high school. So that made me feel really cool because I like thought they were the best and I looked up to them and blah, blah, blah. And it was something I was like kind of curious about. That definitely stuck with me throughout high school and probably overall I would say I smoked weed more than I drank. Maybe because it was more of a thing at my high school versus drinking. Yeah, I remember at least one time smoking weed on lunch break and like coming back and feeling so paranoid. And so I didn't repeat that again because that didn't feel great. Again, it was this escapism, rebellion, but also wanting to fit in and feel accepted and feel cool in whatever way. You know, it was like a combination. Being a teenager is so weird and difficult. Any kind of healing work I've done when I've like reflected on my teenage years, what I would have preferred for myself is to channel some of that energy or more of that energy and that angst into like creative endeavors. And I wish I found people I could share that with, or maybe I already had friends like that, but we just didn't go there, or I just didn't want to do creative things with them. That's kind of what I wish for my teenage self, because I think drinking and smoking weed, like sometimes it can just be to like relax and celebrate, especially when we're like of legal age and it's like a normal, okay time to do these things. It's not necessarily always like, oh, I'm numbing out or I have like a huge problem. It's maybe just like I'm enjoying this and that's fine. But I think for the most part, the way that I was interacting with these things, I was like trying to escape myself or like trying to go somewhere else, be transported elsewhere, trying to be something I wasn't. I think I secretly like wanted more for myself even then. And like that was a strange way of me feeling it, instead of just letting myself actually like let loose and experiment like creatively, you know, whether that was like in art class or writing poetry or with music or whatever, you know, things I dabbled in and was more comfortable dabbling in when I was younger. So then kind of moving on to my 20s, I went to university in Montreal. So that was like a big city, because before I was living in the suburbs of Toronto. The vibe with alcohol in my 20s, or like as I started at McGill, was it was just like the thing to do. I remember like Frosh Week of McGill. So it's like the week before classes actually start. And it was like honestly just about drinking. Tonight we're going to this bar. Tonight we're bar hopping. Tonight we're starting with a beer keg and then walking around and screaming and shouting things. And so I remember doing like the first frosh, which was like the arts faculty frosh. And then I had signed up for the second one, which I think was just like the student union one. And I didn't even go to the second one because even I was so overwhelmed with the amount of drinking that was like normalized. And when I drank, especially like around this time and when I was a teenager, I didn't really stop myself at a good point. I definitely had some like blackout times. Luckily, to my knowledge, nothing terrible ever happened to me. Like no one took advantage of that. I would just drink till I was like blackout or like really sick or whatever. Yeah, it was not good. I would say overall, it still didn't really make me reevaluate my relationship with alcohol, because it was just like socializing equals drinking, leisure equals drinking, relaxing equals drinking, you know? I remember experiencing that first St. Patrick's Day, which was like a big deal, and like really not liking the vibe. So I think like that's where I started to get turned off and not okay with like the bingey kind of drinking. I did not like that St. Patrick's Day vibe. That was not for me. And then in my second year of uni, my health was pretty bad and I didn't understand it at all at the time. I had no connection or relationship to my body and to how it worked and what was happening with it. And I think that's unfortunately common. Our body is just this thing that we have to deal with and we take it for granted, really. And I was totally taking it for granted at that time. And I think especially when you're young, you're just like, oh, why do I have to care about what goes in this thing? Like, I'm good, I'm still young, you know what I mean? But truly my health was at its worst. I was trying to be vegetarian, but like doing it in the worst way, not eating like nice clean foods, just being like really lazy about it, you know? I had some friends that were like doing other kind of drugs recreationally, and I sort of began to dabble with that. That did not help my overall health and overall mental health, you know, because I was drinking and trying these drugs sometimes on the weekends. It was really just a recipe for absolute disaster. In my second year, I think it was in the second semester, I was doing so poorly and feeling so out of sorts and just like crying all the time. It was a really, really difficult period of mental health. The doctor psychiatrist I ended up seeing back at home was basically just like, take these SSRIs. I'm like, cool, I want to feel better, this sucks. So that's just what I did. Even with that, I don't remember at that time trying to take any kind of responsibility really for my health and mental health aside from like taking these pills. I don't even think I really stopped drinking, or I don't think I significantly changed my relationship with alcohol. And that's a shame, because knowing what I know now, I would have, been like, okay, Bianca, the mental health is not good. The alcohol is not contributing positively to that. It's just not. Period. End of story. So this was like, very early 20s. And I remember being around this one woman who was, I think, same age as me. We were both part of this like online magazine. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like maybe sometimes in school or in like different social situations, there's just like one person that's just like the perfect person. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe you are like that. And you have your stuff so together. So there's this one woman that was like, had her shit totally together. And I just could not relate. She would go to Pilates classes on the weekend. And I just like couldn't fathom anyone at our age doing that for themselves. Wow. She had a great head start on the lot of us, But like, I just didn't get it. I'm like, oh, but don't you party? Like, how do you go to a class like that on the weekend? Aren't you hungover? My experience in Montreal was often a blur, but for the most part, I really loved it. It was a great period of like self-discovery. Don't think I ever once thought about my relationship to alcohol. Definitely once I started taking SSRIs, I don't think I was like doing drugs anymore. Like I was probably still smoking weed because I'm like, it's just weed. But anything a little more involved, kind of party drugs, I think I took a break from. And truthfully, I never reacted to them well. Like I would straight up vomit as soon as I took something, yet I still thought it was a good idea. Yeah, in Montreal, I had graduated. I stuck around for a couple of years just working kind of like whatever jobs. Then I got sick of it and I moved to Berlin for a really nice internship opportunity. And that's kind of where my music journalism stuff started. Like I already started writing about music at university through this online magazine. And then I think I contributed to this blog like for free, just to like get experience, just to do something. And then this internship was going to be my first working kind of in the music industry job. And that's when I started like properly writing about music. So that was really cool. But when I moved to Berlin, again, still drinking. And I remember I had moved there in the winter and I was convinced that I would be fine with the winters there because I'm like, I'm Canadian. I've dealt with super cold temperatures. It's fine. But it was so gray there. And the way I was going to clubs on the weekend, I sometimes like, you barely see the sun in the winter, but like there was no chance of me seeing the sun because maybe at sunrise I was still in the club or like sleeping in and not really seeing the sun. So that was not a vibe. That didn't do great things for me, to be honest. Working in the industry I was working in, it was just really normal, like for work events or for any kind of socializing, you just like go for a drink, you have a drink, you go for drinks after work. It's Friday, you have a drink, At a certain point, I was like, you know what? I want to kind of like have this a little bit under control. I don't want to just have 5 drinks on a Wednesday and have to go to work the next day type of thing. So I would try to be at a certain point a little more like tempered with it and just be like, okay, I'm going to this like work function on a Friday. I'm just going to have 1 or 2 drinks so I'm not feeling completely awful the next day. Spoiler alert, at a certain point after 1 or 2 drinks, you might still feel hungover, especially if you're like becoming used to not drinking so much. Yeah, once I was more in like my later 20s, those hangovers were not so cute anymore. In university, I would barely feel a hangover. Like I would drink a lot on a Thursday, go out till 3 a.m., come home, sleep for hours, go to my 8 a.m. French class, be fine, basically. And like maybe take a nap in the afternoon, right? Like this was not the vibe in Berlin, being in my mid and then late 20s. I would still feel terrible the next day at a certain point, even after 1 or 2 drinks. And this was especially annoying because, for example, if you're drinking on a Friday night and if you're like working very standard like full-time hours during the week, if you want to run errands, like Saturday is a good day to run errands. But if I was hungover on a Saturday, it was really like a struggle for me to get things done. And at a certain point, I got sick of that. At a certain point, I was like, you know what? There's this really cute farmer's market near me on Saturday mornings. I can easily just miss it if I'm like too hungover and like feeling miserable. So that also made me really reevaluate my relationship with alcohol in like a very practical way. It was just like, if I want to have a productive day of errands and like feel good and not be stressed out that I like don't have groceries come Monday, then like I gotta get my stuff together a little bit. That was kind of the beginning of really reevaluating my relationship with alcohol, but I was probably still smoking a lot of weed at that time, TBH. So then I started meditating in about 2017. Like that's when I started taking it seriously and trying to do it regularly, like almost every morning. And I feel like gradually that helped me have a better relationship and connection to myself and my body. And I was trying to be consistent with that. And I think I was doing fairly well with all that. Again, trying to be more conscious about drinking alcohol, but still not feeling like, oh no, I have to stop. Then at the beginning of 2018, my mental health took a big turn. I don't think I explicitly mentioned this before, but I think I probably took like SSRIs and also another type of medication that I can't remember the category for maybe about like 5 years in total. And actually, when I first moved to Berlin, I was tapering off and I successfully was able to stay off my medication through a combination of like trying to eat decently well and exercising, basically. Like that mostly worked. So then we go back to 2018, and at the very beginning of the year, my mental health just took a turn. It felt like it came out of nowhere, this instability, and it really kind of shook me. But at the same time, I was self-aware enough to know that I needed to get to the root cause. And it's really interesting because I don't think I read anything that would make me feel that way or had conversations that would make me think like that. But I think it was really just something inside me that's like, no, we got to get to the root of it. A lot of it was because I knew what it was like to be on medication. I didn't want to do that again. When I thought about it and when I felt into it, it really just felt like a Band-Aid solution and not getting to like what is actually causing this in myself. As a result, I consulted a friend of mine in Montreal who was an Ayurvedic practitioner. I did a session with her. She explained some things to me, mostly that it was very high pitta, which alcohol does not help. So at that time, I really committed to not drinking. But the way I approached it, especially then, was like not never say never, not cold turkey, but like I'm gonna choose not to drink to see what happens, to see how it improves my health and my mental health, not be super strict and restricted with myself. That just felt better to me because I also didn't feel comfortable using the term sober because I think I was probably still smoking weed at the time, maybe doing some other things occasionally. And because like I never did any of the 12-step AA stuff. So it was like a combination of the not drinking and of the eating different things. And I, after a few months, like got to a place where I felt so peaceful. I felt so mentally balanced. I had so much more clarity and calm than I had had before. Like I had a lot of anger in me, which makes sense because I had elevated pitta in Ayurveda, which is like the fire kind of dosha. I was feeding my body so much extra fiery stuff like spicy food, alcohol, acidic food. That was really interesting to just see so clearly the connection between what I was putting in my body and my kind of like outputs, right? Like how it affected me and then how I was outputting to the world, certain emotions or certain states. So that really helped me see those really simple connections very clearly, things that we take for granted. Over the next few years, I really committed to not drinking, but I wasn't super strict with it. So for example, I remember going with my parents to Italy, I think in that summer of 2018, I let myself have like an Aperol Spritz, a glass of wine with dinner. Like I probably didn't have more than half a dozen drinks on the whole trip or whatever it was. It didn't make me feel great the next day, but I still let myself have that nice experience because at the time I was like, you know what? I do want an Aperol Spritz. I do want to share a bottle of wine with my parents or whatever it was. So I let myself do that. Yeah, over the course of the next few years, I was pretty flexible like that. I was just like, you know what? If the mood really strikes me, if I want like a glass of champagne, if I want to have like a cocktail once in a while, I will let myself. And that's what I did for a few years. I do feel like the quantity just became like less and less. And that works for me. Just like letting myself like have that flexibility and not being like, no, you cannot have that. That worked for me, because then it also felt cooler when I chose not to, personally, for me. I remember when lockdown started that I made a decision that I was going to stop smoking weed. I was living alone at the time, and I was just like, what am I going to do? Be in my apartment every day and smoke? Like, that just sounds gross to me. So I stopped in March 2020, and I haven't smoked weed since. I had already like not really wanted to party anymore. So as a result, I wasn't doing those kind of related drugs. I've definitely stopped also since 2020 doing that kind of stuff. I've dabbled in like microdose of psychedelics literally a few times since then. And that's it. I don't desire to have those experiences anymore. I truly just like being high on life. It's fun. I like feeling healthy and clear. I've learned to like dealing with my stuff, because sometimes we take these substances to not deal with the stuff, and then it tends to come back tenfold in another way. I remember with the weed stuff, I really resisted stopping for a period of time in 2018 when I was having a tough time with my mental health. Yeah, that was hard, because at a certain point, especially when I was like really going through it, the only mental health professional I could see was this psychiatrist that was like pretty far away. And I could only see her on a whatever early morning once every 2 weeks for like 15 minutes. It was so crazy. She was like, do you smoke weed? And I was like, yes, it's all I have. I don't drink, and I'm feeling so out of sorts right now. It's like the only thing that like brings me comfort. And she's like, no. She's like, you gotta stop. And I appreciated that she was so real with me and didn't like try to indulge me in that. Stopping a bit around that time definitely did help me. I did pick it up again, but then we stopped in 2020, and the rest is history. So I want to kind of conclude by talking about what I've gained from not consuming alcohol or any substances. And just to be like super duper clear, I don't do the, oh, maybe I'll have a drink once in a while thing anymore, just because like I so don't like the feeling the next day. I just really, really don't. I accidentally drank a Moscow Mule because I thought it was a lemonade. I mean, the tastes are very different, but I don't know what was happening. And I felt like crap the next day and the day after. I just really gotten to a point where I'm like, not even a sip, not even a glass, like I'm good. It's not always fun to like drink water. Sometimes we can have like a kombucha or something a little more interesting, but I can't do the once in a blue moon anymore at all. So anyway, going back to what I've gained from not consuming alcohol or any substances, I have gained my health. I feel really good. I think I'm the healthiest I've ever been now, and that definitely like really kicked off in my 30s. Like I was not healthy in my 20s. I was not that healthy in my teens. Is what it is. We live and we learn. My mental health is obviously so much better because I'm not inputting substances into my psyche. I mean, we have to be really real about the negative effects that alcohol, weed, other things can have on our precious brains and therefore mental health. Like, you have to be really careful with these things. And I wasn't that careful when I was younger. And now I'm like, precious brain, protect. But I also really believe in the power of neuroplasticity and that your brain can change and get healthier. Like in certain circumstances, yes, you can permanently damage your brain, but that's in like very serious situations, or if it's like really, really chronic usage of something. But I think for the most part, a lot of it is more reversible than we give it credit for. So don't feel discouraged if you're like, I don't know where my serotonin went, because you will find it. You will find it again. There's lots of things you can do to improve your brain health and therefore your mental health. Another thing I've gained from not consuming alcohol or any substances is I just have this more spiritual connection to life. Like before, when I was still drinking, I was just seeing everything very much in like the 3D material world. Like this is the way it is, and there's no magic or there's no something else going on behind the scenes. So there's nothing like greater than us. Yeah, and just naturally by getting healthier and by not numbing myself in that way, I just naturally became a more spiritual person, which has been very very cool. I think partially because of that, I have gained more self-knowledge and self-mastery because I've had to like actually look at my shit and sit with difficult emotions and not just like numb it with stuff. That's not fun necessarily, especially at the beginning, but the more you're able to really sit with yourself and still have compassion for yourself, it's just really a beautiful thing. I've also gained more time because I'm not drinking or doing whatever and then like feeling like crap the next day and then try to like nurse myself back to health. So I just have so much time. If I go out with people at night, they're drinking and I'm just not and still having a good time, I leave. I go to sleep. Maybe I don't get my full nice 9 hours, but I don't feel like crap the next day and I can probably still do things and live my life the next day. And for that, I am so, so grateful. I have also gained better friends. A lot of the people I was friends with when I was younger, the common denominator was just like drinking or doing things along those lines. And those weren't always my real friends. But now that I don't do those things, I actually know what I find fun and I actually know who I find interesting and who I connect with. Because at least on my end, there's no foggy layer of like, I'm drunk or I'm high or I'm whatever. So I've really been able to find my people and I feel like I have a better filter for people. I look and feel better now at 33 than I did in my 20s. I feel great. I know how to feel great. I know what makes me feel not great and I generally don't do those things. That's amazing. I never knew what my 30s would be like, or I never thought about it that much. When I was in my 20s, I was kind of like, that's old and scary. But now I'm like, I'm young. I feel good. Love it. Saying all this, I encourage you to take inventory on your vices because for me, back in the day, alcohol was a vice, weed was a vice, other things were vices. We all have them, and that's fine. But I encourage you to look at which vices you have that you use to numb out that don't actually feel good. Like, of course, unless you want to be a monk, unless you want to have a very dry lifestyle with no pleasure, which I don't recommend, we're going to have some vices and some of them are okay, you know, in whatever doses are feeling good to you and not like overindulgent. But maybe there's some that you have, whatever it is, drinking, scrolling on social media, eating too much chocolate. Perhaps they feel good in the moment, but then afterwards you realize it's not serving you. Those are the things to look out for. Let's reflect. Let's have some self-awareness. If we're feeling bad later or the next day, is there something else we can replace it with? Do we need to journal? Do we need to simply sit with our emotions, let ourselves cry, whatever it is? I mean, I still have vices. I think I ate more sweets after I stopped drinking. That's something I like will go back to. I haven't been craving sweets as much lately, but it's just is what it is. I would say a lot of my vices are more like watching stupid TV shows, maybe sometimes a little too much instead of reading, spending too much time on Reddit. That's a vice of mine. Scrolling in general, just like reading things that aren't necessarily like stimulating my brain. Of course, a little bit of this is fine. I find TikTok is really addictive, so I try to keep the app off of my phone because when it's on, where does the time go? You know, maybe some of you have experienced this. I hope this episode has been enlightening, eye-opening. I hope you feel less alone if you've been reevaluating your relationship to alcohol or to other substances. This is something that I'm so happy to talk to people about because I've gotten to a really good, solid place with all of this. So if you're like on your sober, curious, or whatever you want to call it journey, don't be afraid to DM me and we can chat about it. I can also give you pointers, tips, just be someone to listen. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Life Forces Podcast. Really, really appreciate you being here. Please share this with a friend who you think would resonate. Please review this if you can on whatever platform you're listening on. Any way you can give back a little bit of energy and gratitude would be amazing. I have so much gratitude for you all for being here. I wish you a beautiful week and I will be back next week and the week after with brand new episodes. Keep it locked and love you.